Serving up stories from the lacrosse field. Brought to you by Lacrosse Magazine. Produced by U.S. Lacrosse. Define obsession. The domination of one's thoughts or feelings by a persistent idea, image, or desire. At its origin, to obsess meant to besiege, occupy, or sit opposite to another, which makes it only appropriate that Alex Smith's obsession is the faceoff, the game within a game, the desire that drove him to set more NCAA lacrosse records than any player in history as a specialist at the University of Delaware.
When I was a freshman, I wrote out all the face-off records on a sheet, and all the ground ball records and just everything I wanted to accomplish. And I wrote it out and I put it on front of my desk. So when I was doing homework at night or watching TV, I would see it there. You know, I wrote basically every record down. Obviously, I didn't get all of them. And when I broke it, I would cross it off with a highlighter. So I checked that one off. And most of them, obviously, I broke my senior year. But I constantly was updating it every year to where I stood.
When he wasn't practicing or poring over his statistics, Smith could be found on his back porch, alone, obsessing over his craft until his knees were bloodied by turf burn.
When I was in college to practice, I had, tape recordings of whistles. I had a turf mat, on my deck out in courtyards there. Just things that helped me practice. The other thing that made me prepared is that I always really kept track of my stick. Face-off guys are always bending their stick. I put a hockey puck in the back of my stick and a piece of wood to make it 6.5 across the top. So I was just very, very, particular about how I went about the position. I paid attention to the nuances of it and studied it. And I think that's what helped me be successful at it.
Smith led Delaware to its only NCAA Final Four in history in 2007. His success at the X carried over into the MLL, first with the Rochester Rattlers and now with the Chesapeake Bayhawks. He soon became a target for teams' hired goons.
Probably the worst thing that happened to me is when I had my arm extended, flat, and I was actually looking for a wing guy to draw the ball to. And the opposing faceoff guy got up and dove at the back of my elbow trying to snap my arm inwards. And that was pretty messed up. And that caused a fight in the MLL. There's obviously a big fight over that. But that was pretty bad. He almost got me. If he would have got me right on the elbow, he would have snapped my arm right in half. But just guys, slashing at my knee, guys coming off the pile and just diving in at me.
At a position where rivalry often breeds contempt, no rivalry has come under the spotlight more than that between Alex Smith and Geoff Snider. It will only get more heated this summer in Manchester, where Smith will represent Team USA, and Snider, the MVP of the 2006 World Championships, will lead Team Canada in its gold medal defense.
I remember in '06 when I was actually in a restaurant with a couple other buddies, and I was watching the game unfold. And I was watching Snider win time after time after time. And my buddy, who was on the lacrosse team there, helped me and goes, "If you were on the team, this wouldn't be happening." I'm like, you're probably right. If a number of guys were on that team that year that were strictly face-off guys, that wouldn't have been happening. And my role on the team is to get possession. My role on the team is to beat Geoff Snider head-to-head. It's as simple as that.
It was Snider's comments in a 2006 Baltimore Sun article that drew negative attention to the face-off position in lacrosse, comments to which Smith takes umbrage.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying. I completely disagree with that. Define cheating. I don't think you really see a lot of it facing off. I never did it in college. I think that sometimes things happen in the face-off where that can get misconstrued. A guy goes a little earlier than some other guy, and the ref doesn't blow the whistle. Is that cheating? Or is that just the luck of what happened, I'll tell you this, lots of times guys go earlier than I do, and the ref doesn't call it, That's not cheating, it's part of the game. Guys aren't out, doing anything egregious, not cheap shining each other, not grabbing the ball, they're not doing anything illegal. But in the course of play, sometimes always, somebody gets a little bit of an advantage over somebody else.
Snider's reputation as an antagonist doesn't seem to affect Smith, who's gotten the best of Snider in most of their MLL encounters.
No matter what the numbers say, he's a tremendous competitor. He's obviously very athletic, he's tough, he's a big boy. I'm 5'10", 200, he's 5'10", he's got to be 230. So he outweighs me a little bit. He's strong, he's fast, he can play the field, but no matter how many games I play against him, you know it's going to be one of those games where both of you are going to walk away and you're going to be pretty sore after. You know, Geoff likes to talk, and I let him talk, and you know, afterwards let the numbers do the talking for me. I'll tell you this, he's a class competitor. You know, off the field, you know, he's a great guy. One of the members of the Canadian team told me, I'm not going to make it to Manchester. It's going to take me out before, so, you know, we'll see. And I plan on being there, so, you know, it gets heated and there's a lot of talk going back and forth, but nothing bad to say about those guys other than I want to beat them.
The first time I saw a stick or was introduced to lacrosse was in 6th grade. It was a phys ed teacher by the name of Vladimir Horrell, and he had played at Bowling Green. At that time I wasn't sure where that was, but we were in phys ed and he'd always have his stick with him. And one day he just suggested, you know, why don't you guys try this game of lacrosse a little? And so he gave us the stick that day, showed us how to use it, and in phys ed we started throwing the ball around. Of course it was like balls all over the place, and he kind of gave us a quick lesson how to catch, how to throw. And what I remember about that day was in the gym he pointed at a string on the wall and said, this is really what you try to do here, is aim at that string and try to hit it. That's what a good lacrosse player does. And sure enough, he demonstrated, and 9 out of 10 times he was hitting that string. And still to this day, as I look back at that, I feel like that was probably not only the first introduction to lacrosse, but most important lesson I've learned is you got to be an accurate player, accurate passer to be a good player.
Selection Sunday looms, and that of course means certain teams are on the bubble. Loyola seems to be in good standing. The Greyhounds, ranked 8th in this week's NCAA Division I Men's Lacrosse Coaches Bowl, could possibly secure a home game and stick a fork in Johns Hopkins in one fell swoop Saturday. Georgetown returns to the top 10 in this week's NCAA Division I Women's Lacrosse Coaches Bowl, thanks to a win over Syracuse that gave the Hoyas the top seed in this weekend's Big East tournament. The inaugural Big East men's lacrosse season comes to a thrilling close Saturday as Georgetown visits Villanova in a game that could have significant NCAA tournament repercussions. Cindy Timchel can lead the Navy women's lacrosse team to its first ever NCAA tournament appearance with a win over Sacred Heart in one of 2 play-in games Saturday. Follow the action this weekend and all season long at laxmagazine.com.
Steve Shaw, probably one of the greatest midfielders in history. Was one of the top face-off men in the 80s. He's a 3-time All-American. He actually had the all-time ground ball record and all-time face-off wins record before I came to Delaware and broke those. And he and I constantly talked in school, which was very cool. It meant a lot that he came to the games where I broke those records, and vice versa. I'll be going to the games when there's kids breaking my records.